In the quiet corners of your home, your devices whisper stories of worlds beyond our own. Tonight, let's take a gentle journey through virtual reality, a technology that promises to dissolve the boundaries between what is real and what is possible. So, settle in, breathe deeply, and let the story unfold. Welcome to Sleepy Tech Stories, and to the third episode of our Matrix Decoded series. I'm here to guide you through a peaceful exploration of virtual reality, humanity's eternal dream of stepping through the looking glass into worlds limited only by imagination. Tonight, we'll discover how the quest to create artificial realities began long before the Matrix. How brilliant minds spent decades trying to build machines that could fool our senses, transport our consciousness, and make us question the very nature of reality itself. Imagine, if you will, a world where the line between real and virtual becomes so thin, so delicate, that crossing it feels as natural as closing your eyes and opening them in a dream. This is the story of virtual reality, the tale of engineers and visionaries who dared to ask, what if we could build the Matrix ourselves? Each breakthrough will explore tonight's lives quietly in the VR headsets around us, in the gaming systems that transport millions to other worlds, in the social platforms where people gather in spaces that exist only as code and light. So close your eyes if you'd like, let your breathing slow, and join me as we trace the gentle evolution of humanity's most ambitious dream, the dream of escaping reality itself. Tonight, you'll meet the computer scientist who built the first window into cyberspace, the entrepreneur who promised us virtual worlds in the 1990s, and the modern pioneers who finally made those dreams come true. These are stories of human longing, of minds reaching beyond the physical world, of the beautiful dance between technology and imagination that brings impossible worlds to life. Let's begin this peaceful journey together through the history of virtual reality and discover how humanity learned to dream with machines. Our journey begins in a quiet laboratory at Harvard University in 1968, where computer scientist Ivan Sutherland is working on something that has never existed before, a machine that can show you worlds that aren't there. The room hums softly with the sound of early computers, massive machines that fill entire walls. Their magnetic tape drives spinning like gentle mechanical prayers. Ivan stands before his creation, a device that will change everything. He calls it the Sword of Damocles, not because it's dangerous, but because it hangs from the ceiling like that legendary blade, suspended over the user's head by a mechanical arm that tracks their every movement. The headset itself is enormous, heavy, nothing like the sleek devices we know today. It weighs so much that it must be supported by the ceiling mount, creating the illusion that a sword hangs over the user's head, ready to fall at any moment. But when you put on Ivan's headset, something magical happens. Simple wireframe shapes appear before your eyes, floating in space, responding to your movements. Turn your head left, and the virtual cube turns with you. Look up, and you see the digital ceiling of a room that exists only in the computer's memory. It's crude by today's standards, just green lines on a black background. But it's the first time in human history that a machine has successfully convinced the human eye that it's looking into another world. Ivan has created the first head-mounted display, the ancestor of every VR headset that will follow. But more than that, he's opened a door between the physical and the digital, between what is and what could be. The experience is profound, almost spiritual. Users report feeling as though they've stepped through a portal, entered a space that follows different rules, where the laws of physics bend to the will of mathematics. Ivan understands that he's not just building a display device, he's creating what he calls the ultimate display, a window into cyberspace itself, a machine that could one day show us anything, take us anywhere, make any dream visible. In his research papers, Ivan writes with the passion of a prophet, describing a future where computers don't just calculate, but create entire universes. He envisions displays so realistic that virtual objects would be indistinguishable from real ones, where you could reach out and touch things that exist only as data. The ultimate display would, of course, be a room within which the computer can control the existence of matter, Ivan writes. A chair displayed in such a room would be good enough to sit in. He's describing the Matrix. 30 years before the movie is made, Ivan's work attracts the attention of the military, of NASA, of researchers who see the potential for training pilots, for exploring dangerous environments, for extending human perception beyond the limits of the physical world. But perhaps most importantly, Ivan has planted a seed in the collective imagination of computer science. The idea that machines could create convincing alternate realities, that we could build worlds limited only by our ability to imagine them. The sword of Damocles hangs in that Harvard laboratory for only a few years, but its influence will span decades. Every VR headset, every virtual world, every digital reality that follows, carries within it the DNA of Ivan Sutherland's first digital window. His story reminds us that the most profound technologies often begin as simple questions. What if we could see the impossible? What if we could step into our dreams? What if the boundary between real and virtual was just another problem waiting to be solved? In the gentle glow of those first wireframe cubes, in the weight of that ceiling-mounted headset, we see the birth of humanity's greatest escape. The moment when we first learned to dream with machines. As Ivan Sutherland's vision spreads through the research community, it finds fertile ground in places where reality itself can be dangerous, where the cost of mistakes is measured in lives, where the ability to practice in perfect safety could mean the difference between success and catastrophe. The United States Air Force becomes one of the first organizations to see the potential of virtual reality, not for entertainment, but for training pilots to fly aircraft worth millions of dollars, to navigate combat situations too dangerous to practice in the real world, in quiet hangars across America. Engineers begin building flight simulators that go beyond simple mechanical mock-ups. These new machines use computer graphics, head-mounted displays, and motion platforms to create experiences so realistic that pilots' bodies respond as if they're actually flying. The simulators are crude by today's standards, but they represent something revolutionary. For the first time, humans can experience situations that would be impossible or deadly to recreate in reality. A pilot can practice emergency landings, experience engine failures, navigate through storms, all while sitting safely on the ground. NASA, too, sees the promise of virtual reality. The space agency faces a unique challenge. How do you train astronauts for environments that no human has ever experienced, for situations that can't be replicated on Earth? In the clean rooms and laboratories of NASA, engineers begin developing what they call telepresence systems, technologies that would allow astronauts to control robotic arms, navigate spacecraft, and explore alien worlds, all through the magic of virtual reality. The concept is beautiful in its simplicity. If you can't bring the astronaut to space, bring space to the astronaut. Create virtual environments so convincing that the human brain accepts them as real, so detailed that muscle memory developed in simulation transfers perfectly to actual space missions. Dr. Scott Fisher, working at NASA's Ames Research Center, begins developing what he calls the Virtual Interface Environment Workstation, or VIEW system. It's a head-mounted display connected to powerful computers that can render three-dimensional worlds in real time. The VIEW system is revolutionary, featuring stereoscopic displays, head tracking, and even primitive hand gesture recognition. Users can reach out and manipulate virtual objects, fly through computer-generated landscapes, experience the sensation of floating in zero gravity. But perhaps most importantly, NASA's work begins to answer a fundamental question about virtual reality. Not just can we create convincing alternate realities, but should we? What are the implications of technology that can make the impossible feel real? The researchers at NASA notice something profound happening to users of their VR systems. After spending hours in virtual environments, people begin to question their perceptions, to wonder about the nature of reality itself. Some users report feeling disoriented when they remove their headsets, as if the virtual world was more real than the physical one. Others describe a sense of loss, a longing to return to digital spaces that felt more vivid, more meaningful than everyday life. These early observations hint at questions that will become central to our understanding of virtual reality, and to the themes explored in the Matrix decades later. If we can create experiences indistinguishable from reality, how do we know what's real? If virtual worlds can feel more engaging than the physical world, which one is more important? The military and NASA applications of VR establish something crucial: that virtual reality isn't just about entertainment or escapism. It's about extending human capability, about allowing us to experience and learn from situations that would otherwise be impossible. But they also establish something else: that virtual reality has the power to change how we perceive reality itself. That once you've experienced the impossible, once you've flown through digital skies or walked on virtual moons, the ordinary world never looks quite the same. These early applications plant the seeds for everything that follows: the gaming revolutions, the social virtual worlds, the metaverse dreams of today. They prove that virtual reality isn't just a curiosity. It's a fundamental expansion of human experience. In the quiet hum of those early flight simulators, in the sterile glow of NASA's laboratories, we hear the first whispers of a question that will echo through decades. If we can build convincing alternate realities, what does it mean to be real? The military and space applications show us that virtual reality's greatest power isn't in helping us escape from reality, but in helping us prepare for realities we've never faced, and perhaps in helping us understand reality itself. As the 1980s dawn, virtual reality begins its journey from military laboratories and NASA research centers into the hands of a brilliant, eccentric visionary who will give the technology its name and its soul. Jaron Lanier is unlike anyone in the tech world. With his flowing dreadlocks and philosophical nature, He looks more like a musician than a computer scientist. And indeed, he is both. A composer who sees technology as another instrument for human expression. In 1984, Jaron founds VPL Research, Virtual Programming Languages, in a small building in Redwood City, California. The company's mission is audacious: to bring virtual reality to everyone, to democratize the technology that has been locked away in government labs and university research centers. Jaron doesn't just want to build VR systems. He wants to create what he calls shared virtual worlds, spaces where people can meet, collaborate, and experience things together that would be impossible in the physical world. He envisions virtual reality as the ultimate creative medium, a technology that could allow artists to sculpt with light, musicians to compose with space itself, writers to create stories that readers could literally step inside and experience. VPL's first major breakthrough is the Data Glove, a fabric glove embedded with fiber optic sensors that can track the movement of every finger, every gesture, translating human hand movements into digital commands. The Data Glove is revolutionary because it solves one of virtual reality's fundamental problems. How do you interact with a world that isn't there? How do you touch the untouchable? Manipulate objects that exist only as mathematics? With the Data Glove, users can reach into virtual worlds and grab objects, sculpt digital clay, paint with three-dimensional brushstrokes for the first time. Virtual reality becomes truly interactive, responsive to human intention and creativity. But Jaron's greatest contribution isn't technological, it's philosophical. He understands that virtual reality isn't just about creating realistic simulations. It's about expanding human consciousness, about giving people new ways to think, to feel, to be. In interviews and lectures, Jaron speaks about virtual reality with the passion of a poet. He describes it as the first technology that doesn't just extend our bodies, but extends our minds. He talks about virtual worlds where the laws of physics can be rewritten, where people can experience life from radically different perspectives. Imagine, Jaron suggests, a virtual world where you could experience what it's like to be a tree, feeling sunlight on your leaves, sensing the flow of nutrients through your roots, or a world where you could shrink down to molecular size and watch chemical reactions unfold around you like cosmic dances. VPL begins creating these impossible experiences. They build virtual worlds where users can fly, where they can change their appearance at will, where they can collaborate on three-dimensional artworks that exist only in cyberspace. The company's demonstrations become legendary in Silicon Valley. Visitors put on VPL's headsets and data gloves and find themselves in digital spaces that feel more like dreams than computer programs. They can reach out and touch virtual objects, manipulate them with their hands, share the experience with others who appear as digital avatars. But perhaps most importantly, VPL proves that virtual reality can be social. Multiple users can share the same virtual space, see each other's avatars, collaborate on projects, communicate in ways that go beyond words. Jaron realizes that he's not just building entertainment technology, he's creating new forms of human connection. In VPL's virtual worlds, people can meet regardless of physical distance, can share experiences that would be impossible in the real world, can express themselves in ways that transcend the limitations of their physical bodies. The media begins to take notice. Magazine covers feature images of people wearing VPL's bulky headsets, their faces hidden behind displays, their hands encased in data gloves, reaching toward invisible objects in digital space. Virtual reality becomes the technology of the future, the next big thing, the revolution that will change everything. But Jaron also begins to grapple with deeper questions about his creation. If virtual worlds can feel more engaging than reality, if people can express themselves more freely as digital avatars than as their physical selves, what does that say about the nature of identity, of reality itself? He starts to worry about the potential for virtual reality to become a form of escape, a way for people to avoid dealing with the challenges of the physical world. He sees the danger of what he calls virtual reality addiction, the possibility that people might prefer their digital lives to their real ones. These concerns echo themes that will later be explored in the Matrix. The idea that virtual worlds might become so appealing that people lose touch with reality, that the simulation might become more important than the world it simulates. But Jaron remains optimistic about virtual reality's potential. He believes that if designed thoughtfully, VR can enhance human experience rather than replace it, can help people understand themselves and each other more deeply, can expand the boundaries of what it means to be human. VPL Research becomes the first company to commercialize virtual reality, to make it available to researchers, artists, and early adopters around the world. Their systems are expensive, costing hundreds of thousands of dollars. But they prove that consumer virtual reality is possible. Jaron Lanier's vision of virtual reality as a creative medium, as a tool for human connection and expression, establishes the philosophical foundation for everything that follows. He shows us that VR isn't just about technology, it's about expanding human potential. In the gentle glow of VPL's virtual worlds, in the graceful movements of the data glove, we see the birth of virtual reality as an art form, as a new medium for human creativity and connection, as a technology that doesn't just simulate reality, but transcends it. As the 1990s unfold, virtual reality finds itself caught between impossible promises and stubborn technological limitations. The dream that Jaron Lanier and others have painted of seamless digital worlds indistinguishable from reality crashes against the harsh realities of 1990s computing power. The problem is fundamental and heartbreaking in its simplicity. The human visual system is extraordinarily sophisticated, capable of processing millions of pixels, detecting the subtlest changes in light and shadow, noticing when something isn't quite right. But the computers of the 1990s, even the most powerful ones, struggle to render even simple three-dimensional scenes in real time. The graphics are blocky, pixelated, obviously artificial. The frame rates are low, causing motion to appear jerky and unnatural. Users put on VR headsets expecting to enter convincing alternate realities, but instead find themselves looking at crude wireframe worlds that feel more like early video games than immersive experiences. The gap between expectation and reality is vast and disappointing. Worse still, the technology causes physical discomfort. The headsets are heavy, often weighing several pounds, causing neck strain during extended use. The displays are dim and blurry, forcing users to squint to make out details in virtual worlds. But the most serious problem is motion sickness. When the visual system sees movement that doesn't match what the inner ear feels, the brain becomes confused, leading to nausea, dizziness, and disorientation. VR developers call it simulator sickness, and it affects a significant percentage of users. People put on headsets, excited to explore virtual worlds, only to remove them minutes later, feeling queasy and disoriented. The technology that promised to transport users to other realities instead makes them acutely aware of their physical bodies, of the limitations of the machines strapped to their heads. Companies like VPL Research, which had seemed poised to revolutionize computing, begin to struggle. The market for expensive, uncomfortable VR systems proves to be much smaller than anticipated. Jaron Lanier's company, despite its technological innovations and philosophical vision, faces financial difficulties. The cost of developing VR hardware and software is enormous, but the number of customers willing to pay hundreds of thousands of dollars for crude virtual reality systems is limited. In 1990, VPL Research files for bankruptcy. The company that had defined consumer virtual reality, that had given the technology its name and its dreams, becomes a casualty of the gap between vision and capability. Other VR companies follow. Virtuality, a British company that had created arcade-style VR systems, struggles to find customers willing to pay premium prices for experiences that often left users feeling sick. The media, which had once breathlessly covered virtual reality as the next big thing, begins to turn skeptical. Articles appear with titles like Virtual Reality, Virtual Disappointment, and the VR hype bubble bursts. Virtual reality becomes associated with overpromising and under-delivering, with technology that sounds amazing in theory but fails to work properly in practice. But perhaps the most damaging blow comes from an unexpected source. Nintendo, the beloved video game company that had brought joy to millions of homes around the world. In 1995, Nintendo releases the Virtual Boy, a portable VR gaming system that promises to bring virtual reality to the masses at an affordable price. The device costs just $180, a fraction of the price of professional VR systems. But the Virtual Boy is a disaster. The system displays only red and black graphics, causing eye strain and headaches. The games are simple and repetitive, failing to capture the imagination of players accustomed to Nintendo's colorful, engaging titles. Most critically, the Virtual Boy requires users to lean over and peer into the device, creating an uncomfortable, isolating experience that feels nothing like the social, immersive virtual reality that had been promised. The Virtual Boy sells poorly, and Nintendo quickly discontinues it. The failure of such a high-profile product from such a respected company deals a devastating blow to virtual reality's reputation. If Nintendo, with all its expertise in creating engaging interactive experiences, couldn't make VR work, who could? By the late 1990s, virtual reality has largely disappeared from public consciousness. The technology that had once seemed destined to revolutionize computing, to create new forms of human experience, to blur the lines between real and virtual, is relegated to research labs and niche applications. The dream of consumer virtual reality, of shared virtual worlds, of digital realities indistinguishable from physical ones, seems to have died. But in the quiet corners of research institutions, in the minds of visionary engineers, in the code of experimental software, the dream persists. The failure of 1990s VR doesn't kill the vision. It simply forces it to wait, to evolve, to prepare for a time when technology could finally match ambition. The great disappointment of 1990s virtual reality teaches us something important about innovation, that sometimes the most transformative technologies arrive before their time, that failure is often just success, waiting for the right moment, the right capabilities, the right convergence of dreams and possibility. In the abandoned VR labs, in the discontinued headsets gathering dust, in the patents filed by bankrupt companies, the seeds of future success lie dormant, waiting for a new generation of dreamers to water them with better technology and renewed hope. The Matrix, when it arrives in 1999, will remind the world of virtual reality's promise and inspire a new generation of engineers to try again, to build the digital worlds that the 1990s could only imagine. While virtual reality retreats from the public eye, another revolution is quietly unfolding in living rooms around the world. Video games, once dismissed as simple entertainment, are becoming increasingly sophisticated, creating immersive experiences that hint at VR's future potential. The gaming industry doesn't abandon the dream of virtual reality. It simply approaches it differently. Instead of trying to create perfect simulations of reality, game developers focus on creating compelling experiences, worlds that feel real not because they look real, but because they engage the imagination. In the late 1990s and early 2000s, games like Half-Life and System Shock create first-person experiences so immersive that players lose themselves for hours, forgetting the physical world as they navigate digital spaces that feel alive, responsive, meaningful. These games prove something important: that presence, the feeling of being somewhere else, doesn't require perfect visual fidelity. It requires engagement, agency, the sense that your actions matter in the virtual world. The gaming industry also drives crucial technological advances. Graphics cards become more powerful, displays become sharper and faster, processing power increases exponentially. Each generation of gaming hardware brings us closer to the computational power needed for convincing virtual reality. Meanwhile, in research labs and universities, VR development continues quietly. Researchers learn from the failures of the 1990s, focusing on solving the fundamental problems that had made early VR systems uncomfortable and unconvincing. They work on reducing latency, the delay between head movement and visual response that causes motion sickness. They experiment with new display technologies, lighter headsets, better tracking systems. The internet revolution also plays a crucial role as broadband connections become common. The possibility of shared virtual worlds, of social VR experiences, begins to seem feasible again. Games like World of Warcraft and Second Life create persistent virtual worlds where millions of people gather, socialize, and build communities. These aren't VR experiences in the traditional sense, but they prove that people hunger for digital spaces where they can express themselves, connect with others, and experience things impossible in the physical world. Second Life, in particular, becomes a fascinating experiment in virtual society. Users create detailed avatars, buy virtual property, build digital homes and businesses, form relationships that feel as meaningful as those in the physical world. Some people spend more time in Second Life than in their offline lives, earning real money through virtual businesses, forming friendships and romantic relationships with people they've never met in person, creating identities that feel more authentic than their physical selves. The success of these virtual worlds raises profound questions about the nature of reality and identity, questions that echo the themes of the Matrix. If people can live meaningful lives in digital spaces, if virtual relationships can feel as real as physical ones, what does it mean to be real? The gaming industry also begins to experiment with motion controls, with systems like the Nintendo Wii that track physical movement and translate it into game actions. These systems hint at the kind of natural interaction that VR will eventually require. Mobile gaming, too, plays an important role as smartphones become ubiquitous. Millions of people carry powerful computers in their pockets, computers capable of rendering three-dimensional graphics and tracking motion. The convergence of all these trends, powerful graphics hardware, fast internet connections, motion tracking, mobile computing, creates the foundation for VR's eventual renaissance. But perhaps most importantly, gaming culture keeps the dream of virtual reality alive in the public imagination. Science fiction films like The Matrix and Minority Report show audiences visions of immersive digital worlds, while games provide increasingly convincing previews of what those worlds might feel like. A generation grows up playing video games, comfortable with the idea of spending time in digital spaces, of controlling avatars, of accepting virtual worlds as legitimate places for meaningful experiences. This cultural shift is crucial. When VR finally becomes technically feasible, there's already an audience ready to embrace it. People who understand intuitively that virtual experiences can be as engaging, as meaningful, as emotionally powerful as physical ones. The gaming industry's patient cultivation of virtual worlds, its focus on engagement over realism, its gradual improvement of the underlying technologies, creates the perfect conditions for VR's eventual return. By the late 2000s, all the pieces are in place. Graphics hardware has become powerful enough to render convincing virtual worlds in real time. Display technology has advanced to the point where lightweight, higher-resolution headsets are possible. Motion tracking has become accurate and affordable. The gaming industry's quiet revolution proves that sometimes the most important progress happens not in dramatic breakthroughs, but in steady, patient improvement, in countless small advances, in the gradual building of capability and culture, in the persistent belief that virtual worlds can be meaningful spaces for human experience. In every frame rendered by a graphics card, in every virtual world explored by a player, in every online friendship formed in digital space, we see the foundation being laid for VR's triumphant return. The dream of virtual reality never truly died. It simply went underground, nurtured by gamers and developers who understood that the most powerful realities are often the ones we create ourselves, in code, in pixels, in the infinite possibilities of digital space. In 2009, in a cluttered garage in Long Beach, California, a 17-year-old named Palmer Luckey begins tinkering with old VR headsets, collecting vintage equipment from the failed experiments of the 1990s, dreaming of building something better. Palmer is an unlikely revolutionary. He's a homeschooled teenager, more comfortable with circuit boards than social situations, obsessed with virtual reality at a time when most people have forgotten it exists. But Palmer has something that the VR pioneers of the 1990s lacked: access to modern technology. Smartphone screens have become incredibly sharp and lightweight. Motion sensors have become precise and inexpensive. Processing power that once required room-sized computers now fits in devices you can hold in your hand. Palmer begins building his own VR headset, using smartphone displays, custom lenses, and motion tracking sensors. He calls his creation the Rift, and it's unlike anything that came before. The Rift is lightweight, comfortable, and most importantly, it works. The field of view is wide. The resolution is sharp. The tracking is precise. For the first time since the 1990s, someone has built a VR headset that delivers on the technology's promises. Palmer shares his creation online, posting videos and technical details on forums where VR enthusiasts gather. The response is immediate and enthusiastic. People who had given up on virtual reality begin to pay attention again. One of those people is John Carmack, the legendary programmer behind games like Doom and Quake, a man whose work had helped define what immersive gaming could be. John sees Palmer's headset and immediately understands its significance. This isn't just another VR prototype. It's the device that could finally make virtual reality mainstream. John begins working with Palmer, optimizing software for the Rift, demonstrating it at gaming conferences, showing the world that VR's time has finally come. The demonstrations are revelatory, but instead find themselves genuinely transported. The sense of presence, of being somewhere else, is immediate and convincing. In 2012, Palmer launches a Kickstarter campaign to fund production of the Rift. He asks for $250,000, hoping to sell a few thousand units to VR enthusiasts and developers. The response exceeds everyone's expectations. The campaign raises over $2.4 million, with nearly 10,000 people pre-ordering a device that exists only as prototypes. The pent-up demand for good VR, dormant since the 1990s, explodes into the open. Palmer founds Oculus VR, and suddenly, virtual reality is front-page news again. But this time, the technology actually works. The tech industry takes notice. Facebook's Mark Zuckerberg tries the Rift and immediately sees its potential not just for gaming, but for social connection, for creating shared virtual spaces where people can meet regardless of physical distance. In 2014, Facebook acquires Oculus for $2 billion, a staggering sum that signals the tech giant's belief that VR represents the future of human communication. The acquisition validates Palmer's vision and triggers a new VR gold rush. Companies that had ignored virtual reality for decades suddenly scramble to develop their own headsets, their own virtual worlds, their own piece of what seems destined to be the next major computing platform. Google develops Cardboard. Samsung creates Gear VR, a more sophisticated mobile headset. Sony announces PlayStation VR, bringing virtual reality to the massive console gaming market. HTC partners with Valve, the company behind the Steam gaming platform, to create the Vive AR system that allows users to walk around virtual spaces, to reach out and touch virtual objects with their hands. Each new headset brings improvements: higher resolution displays, better tracking, more comfortable designs. The rapid pace of innovation, driven by competition and massive investment, accelerates VR's development in ways that seemed impossible just a few years earlier. But perhaps most importantly, the new generation of VR systems solves the fundamental problems that had plagued the technology in the 1990s. Motion sickness becomes rare. Visual quality becomes convincing. The sense of presence becomes reliable and immediate. The first consumer Oculus Rift ships in 2016, followed quickly by the HTC Vive and PlayStation VR for the first time. Ordinary consumers can buy VR systems that actually deliver on the technology's promises. The experiences available on these new systems are revelatory. Users can explore alien worlds, paint with light in three-dimensional space, stand on the deck of a sinking ship, walk through ancient Rome, experience stories not just as observers but as participants. VR gaming becomes a new art form, with developers creating experiences impossible in any other medium. Games like Beat Saber turn music into physical activity. Half-Life Alyx creates narrative experiences of unprecedented immersion. Tiltbrush allows artists to sculpt with light itself. Palmer Luckey's garage experiment has become a global phenomenon. The teenager who collected broken VR headsets has sparked a renaissance that transforms virtual reality from a failed technology into one of the most exciting frontiers in computing. His story reminds us that sometimes the most important innovations come not from large corporations or well-funded research labs, but from passionate individuals who refuse to accept that something is impossible, who see potential where others see only failure. In the comfortable weight of a modern VR headset, in the sharp clarity of its displays, in the immediate sense of presence it creates, we feel the culmination of decades of dreaming, the moment when virtual reality finally becomes real. As VR technology matures, something beautiful and unexpected begins to happen. The virtual worlds that engineers built to showcase their hardware become gathering places for human connection. Digital spaces where people form friendships, communities, and relationships that transcend the boundaries of physical space. Applications like VirtChat, Rec Room, and Alspacever create virtual social spaces where people can meet as avatars, express themselves in ways impossible in the physical world, and connect with others who share their interests, their dreams, their need for community. In these virtual worlds, a shy person can become confident. Someone with physical limitations can dance and run freely. People separated by thousands of miles can share intimate conversations as if they're sitting in the same room. The avatars people choose reveal something profound about human nature. Some users create idealized versions of themselves. Others experiment with different genders, ages, or even non-human forms. The freedom to choose how you appear, how you present yourself to the world, becomes a powerful form of self-expression. Virtual reality reveals that identity is more fluid, more creative than we might have imagined. In VR, you can be anyone, anything, and the relationships you form are based not on physical appearance, but on personality, on shared interests, on the content of your character. During the COVID-19 pandemic, when physical gathering becomes dangerous, virtual worlds become lifelines. People attend virtual concerts, graduation ceremonies, wedding receptions, finding ways to maintain human connection even when separated by quarantine and distance. The experiences are surprisingly meaningful. A virtual hug, conveyed through haptic feedback and gesture, can feel as comforting as a physical one. A shared virtual sunset, watched with friends from around the world, can be as beautiful as any real landscape. These social VR experiences begin to blur the line between virtual and real relationships. Friendships formed in virtual worlds spill over into the physical world. Virtual communities organize real-world meetups. People fall in love with partners they first met as avatars. The technology companies take notice. Facebook, now Meta, announces its vision of the Metaverse, a persistent virtual world where people will work, play, socialize, and live significant portions of their lives. The Metaverse concept is ambitious, perhaps impossibly so. It envisions a seamless virtual universe where different platforms and applications connect, where your avatar can move freely between virtual spaces, where digital objects have persistent value across multiple worlds. Critics worry about the implications. If virtual worlds become more engaging than physical reality, will people retreat from the challenges of the real world? If corporations control these virtual spaces, what happens to privacy, to freedom, to authentic human connection? The questions echo the themes of the Matrix. The concern that virtual worlds might become so appealing that people lose touch with reality, that the simulation might become more important than the world it simulates. But supporters argue that VR represents the next evolution of human communication, a technology that could bring people together across distances, cultures, and physical limitations, creating new forms of empathy and understanding. The truth, as often happens with transformative technologies, likely lies somewhere in between. Virtual reality is neither utopia nor dystopia, but a tool that amplifies human nature, for better and worse. In the gentle glow of VR headsets around the world, in the laughter shared between friends who have never met in person, in the tears shed over virtual experiences that feel more real than reality, we see the profound power of technology to connect human hearts and minds. The social applications of VR remind us that the most important aspect of virtual reality isn't the technology itself, but what it allows us to do, to be, to experience together. Whether the Metaverse becomes the transformative platform its advocates envision, or simply another chapter in the long history of human communication tools, virtual reality has already achieved something remarkable. It has proven that presence, connection, and meaning don't require physical proximity, that human relationships can flourish in digital spaces, that the boundaries between real and virtual, between physical and digital, are more permeable than we ever imagined. In every virtual handshake, in every shared virtual adventure, in every moment of genuine connection between people who exist as avatars in digital space, we see the fulfillment of virtual reality's deepest promise, not to replace human connection, but to expand it, to make it possible across any distance, any barrier, any limitation that the physical world might impose. As our journey through the history of virtual reality comes to a close, let's take a moment to reflect on what we've discovered together about technology, about human nature, and about our eternal desire to transcend the boundaries of the physical world. We began with Ivan Sutherland, whose sword of Damocles opened the first window into cyberspace, showing us that machines could create convincing alternate realities, that the boundary between real and virtual was just another problem waiting to be solved. We walked with the military researchers and NASA engineers who proved that virtual experiences could prepare us for realities we'd never faced, could extend human capability beyond the limits of the physical world. We met Jaron Lanier, the visionary who gave virtual reality its name and its soul, who understood that VR wasn't just about technology, but about expanding human consciousness, about creating new forms of expression and connection. We witnessed the great disappointment of the 1990s when dreams crashed against technological limitations. We saw how gaming kept the dream alive, how patient developers and passionate players maintained faith in virtual worlds, gradually building the culture and technology that would make VR's renaissance possible. We celebrated Palmer Luckey's garage revolution, the moment when a teenager's obsession sparked a global transformation, proving that the most important innovations often come from the most unexpected places. And we explored the social dimensions of virtual reality, the beautiful discovery that digital spaces could become gathering places for human connections, that avatars could express authentic aspects of the human spirit. Each chapter of this story carries the same beautiful message, that human beings have an irrepressible desire to transcend limitations, to explore new realities, to connect with each other in ever more meaningful ways. Virtual reality, in all its forms, represents something fundamental about human nature. We are creatures who dream, who imagine, who refuse to accept that what is all there can be. The Matrix, when it appeared in 1999, captured this eternal human longing. The film asked whether we would choose comfortable illusion or difficult truth, whether virtual experiences could be more meaningful than physical ones, whether the boundaries of reality were as fixed as we believed. Virtual reality technology doesn't answer these questions, but it makes them more urgent, more personal, more immediate. Every time we put on a VR headset, we participate in humanity's oldest philosophical debate. What is real? What matters? What it means to be human. As you drift towards sleep tonight, carry with you the wonder of those early VR pioneers, their willingness to imagine impossible things, their persistence in the face of failure, their understanding that the most important realities are often the ones we create ourselves. Remember that virtual reality's greatest achievement isn't technological, it's human. It has shown us that presence, connection, and meaning can exist in any space where human consciousness chooses to dwell. Whether we're exploring alien worlds, meeting friends as avatars, or simply marveling at the magic of seeing impossible things, virtual reality reminds us that the boundaries of human experience are limited only by our imagination, our creativity, our willingness to dream. Sweet dreams, and may your own virtual adventures, whether in sleep or in digital worlds, expand your understanding of what it means to be real, to be connected, to be wonderfully, impossibly human. Sleep well, and dream of the infinite realities yet to be discovered in the gentle space between what is and what could be.
you